Okay, good morning, beautiful students, and welcome to the introduction of your rough draft assignment. And what I have for you here is the essay checklist on the first page. The second page is information on how to correctly cite drama in poetic format. And then I believe that's it. Yep. So take a look here. You'll notice that what I've done for you is kind of set it up like an outline. I'm sure you've seen this before with the dystopia essay, but this is a really good way to make sure that in addition to your outline worksheet, that you are including everything that really goes into the essay beyond the outline itself. So I've broken it up by paragraph here, and you'll notice, the requirements were 4 paragraphs. So you at least have to have, 1, 2, 3 in this conclusion paragraph at the end. But if you do choose to add an optional paragraph, right, it's really just repeating the same structure that you've seen before in the previous checklist. But it's really good for those of you that love checklists, to go ahead and use this. So for instance, on the outline worksheet, you definitely already wrote out, an attention grabber and your thesis statement, but now you've got to add this stuff in between, right? You got to make sure that you refer to the topic of the essay, transition to your thesis statement. But again, the introduction paragraph will probably be about 3 sentences long. It'll probably be really short compared to the rest of your essay. Now, when you get to your first body paragraph, you want to make sure that you add several things to what you put on the outline worksheet. Now, on the outline worksheet, you should have had data, and you should have had it cited in MLA format. So these are the only 2 things that you really truly had on the outline worksheet. So notice you've got to add a transition, you do have a beginning of a claim on your outline worksheet, but you have to also put it into a sentence format. You want to make sure that whatever you listed first for the plan of development, as far as the literary device, whatever you mentioned first, that is going to be the first claim of your first body paragraph. You also need to go ahead and make sure that you introduce your data. And again, you want to say who is doing what and when. Okay, so let's say it's Romeo complaining to Benvolio about love in the beginning of Act 1. Okay, that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about an introduction to data. And then once you've cited the actual quote, right, you got to make sure that you interpret your data. You ask yourself, okay, what in the data actually shows evidence of the literary device, okay? And then you want to analyze how and why does that prove whatever your statement was about love in the thesis. And then transition. Most likely you're going to use a transition of similarity because you are using 2 similar types of data to prove the same claim and thesis. So use something like in addition, likewise, also, something along those lines to transition into the next introduction to your data, right? Again, saying who is doing what and when. Very, very important that you answer those 3 questions in your introduction to your data. Again, cited in MLA format, correct MLA format. And again, the second page of this document shows you how to do that. Interpret the data, right? What is it in my data that shows evidence of the literary device? And then analyze it. Right? How does Shakespeare use that to prove or convey his theme about love? Then you're going to add transition, data, and warrant as necessary. So let's say I had an example, 3 examples of the same use of soliloquy to prove the point, then I could add more data and warrant. But don't forget this conclusion sentence. These are probably the most important parts of the body paragraphs. You got to synthesize all of Shakespeare's use of this data, reference it, and then restate your claim, how that contributes to the theme. Then you transition into your next body paragraph and you follow the same process, just making sure that you're discussing now the second part or the second literary device that you believe Shakespeare uses to convey the theme in his essay. So on and so forth, down to the conclusion paragraph, where on your actual outline worksheet, you've already restated your thesis, and you've hopefully made a little note to yourself about how to tie that back to your writing hook. But keep in mind, right, you want to transition. The most obvious transition is in conclusion, but try and play with that a little bit. Restate the thesis. Make sure that you reiterate, synthesizing your main points from throughout the essay. And I also want to have a little comment from you about why it's important that we learn this lesson from Shakespeare. What did you take away from it? What kind of warning did you get that you'll pay attention to in future relationships, whether it's with a significant other, a friend, an enemy, or a mentor? And that's it. And then here we've got some information about how to correctly cite the data. And you'll notice that I've given you several examples. The first one is for poetry from a drama that's 3 lines or less. The second one is 4 lines or more. And then finally, finally, if you have conversation between 2 or more characters, especially if it's 4 lines or more, or if a line is split between the 2 of them. All right, so let's take a look. If you can recall from poetry, whenever you're citing 3 lines or less of poetry, you want to make sure that you're including a space, a slash, and a space to show where one line ends and another begins. Ooh, forgot my space there. Okay. All right, and this is an example of data from the prologue. But if you're going to cite 4 lines or more, then you got to make sure that you indent your data 1 tab in, and you copy it verbatim like it is in the text, making sure not to include quotation marks. Okay. Putting the period on the inside before the opening parentheses, and then citing the act, the scene, and the line numbers. Finally, if there's 2 people speaking, you need to show which character is saying what words at what point. And the way that you do this is you put the character's name in all caps with a period, and then copy it verbatim from the text. And notice here, because it is 4 lines or more, and because it is a conversation, that you will have to indent it. And it's really important too in a conversation, even if it is only a couple lines, that you still follow this rule, just because it's easier to see who's speaking and when. And that's it. If you have any questions, please email. Enjoy writing your rough draft. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. And that's it.